Think about the last time you got something right on the first try. Maybe it was a quiz, a recipe, a parking job you nailed without even thinking about it. It felt good, smooth, easy. But here is the strange part. You probably do not remember it. Not really. Your brain filed it away and moved on, like tossing a receipt into a drawer you will never open again. Now think about the last time you failed, the answer you got wrong, the cake that collapsed in the oven, the moment you said the wrong thing and felt your stomach drop. That one you remember. Every detail, every feeling. Why is that? Your brain treats success and failure like two completely different kinds of information. And the one that actually rewires your neurons, strengthens your memory, and accelerates your learning is not the one you would expect. You have been taught your entire life that the goal is to get things right. Gold stars, perfect scores, clean runs with no mistakes. The message was drilled into you from the first day of school. Success means you are learning. Failure means you are not. But modern neuroscience has flipped that idea completely upside down. In 2011, a neuroscientist named Jason Moser at Michigan State University ran an experiment that changed how we understand the learning brain. He hooked participants up to an EEG machine and gave them a simple task designed to produce frequent errors. Every time a participant made a mistake, something fired in their brain. A specific electrical signal called the error-related negativity, or ERN. It spiked within a fraction of a second after the error occurred. Before the person even consciously realized they had gotten it wrong, their brain had already detected the mistake and started processing it. But that was only the first signal. A second signal followed shortly after, called the PE. This one was different. It was larger, slower, more deliberate, and it only appeared in full strength when the person actually paid attention to their error instead of brushing it off and moving on. Here is what made the study remarkable. The participants whose brains produced a stronger P signal, the ones who lingered on their mistakes and engaged with them, performed significantly better on the very next round. Their accuracy improved, their reaction times sharpened, their brains literally upgraded themselves in real time. Not because they practiced more, not because they studied harder, because they failed, noticed the failure, and let their brain process it. Your brain has a built-in error correction system. It runs constantly, just below the surface of your conscious awareness, scanning for mismatches between what you predicted would happen and what actually did. When you get something right, the prediction matches the outcome. Your brain barely reacts. There is nothing new to encode, nothing to fix, nothing to wire differently. But when you get something wrong, there is a gap, a mismatch between expectation and reality. And that gap is where learning actually lives. Robert Bjork, a cognitive psychologist at UCLA, has spent over 4 decades studying something he calls desirable difficulties. These are conditions that make learning feel harder in the moment, but lead to dramatically better retention and understanding over time. Spacing out your study sessions instead of cramming the night before. Testing yourself on material before you have even finished studying it. Mixing up different types of problems in a single session instead of doing 20 of the same kind in a row. All of these strategies share one thing in common. They increase the chance that you will struggle, make mistakes, and feel like you are falling behind. And that is exactly why they work. Bjork discovered that when learning feels easy, it is almost always an illusion. You feel confident because the information is flowing smoothly, the page makes sense, the video tutorial seems clear, but your brain is not doing the deep processing required to store that information for the long term. It is like reading a page of a textbook and feeling like you completely understood it, only to realize 10 minutes later that you cannot recall a single key point. The smoothness tricked you. Your brain confused the feeling of familiarity with actual mastery, and those are not the same thing at all. But when learning feels difficult, when you are reaching for an answer and coming up just short, when you are making errors and having to go back and correct them, your brain is working harder beneath the surface. It is forming new connections, strengthening weak pathways, tagging information as important precisely because it required effort to retrieve. That struggle, that friction, is what builds the neural architecture that makes knowledge permanent. There is a researcher in Singapore named Manu Kapoor who pushed this idea even further than anyone expected. He wanted to know what would happen if you deliberately let students fail before you taught them anything at all. So he designed an experiment with 2 groups of math students. The first group received traditional direct instruction. The teacher explained the concept clearly, walked through step-by-step examples on the board, and then assigned practice problems. Clean, orderly, efficient. The second group received the practice problems first. No instruction, no examples, no guidance at all. They had to struggle with the problems on their own, try strategies that did not work, make wrong guesses, and sit in the discomfort of genuinely not knowing what to do. Then both groups received the exact same lesson from the same teacher with the same amount of class time. When they were tested afterward, the results were not even close. The group that had failed first dramatically outperformed the group that had been taught first. They scored higher on conceptual understanding. They scored higher on transfer problems they had never seen before. They retained the material longer. Kapoor called this productive failure. The act of struggling with a problem before you have the tools to solve it does something powerful to your brain. It creates a web of questions, partial connections, and knowledge gaps. And when the real explanation finally arrives, your brain knows exactly where to put every piece. The confusion was not a barrier to learning. It was the scaffold. Think about what that means for how you approach every new skill, every new subject, every challenge you face. You probably wait until you feel ready before you try. You watch the full tutorial first. You read the entire manual. You prepare until you feel confident. And only once you believe you understand, do you finally attempt the thing. But Kapoor's research suggests that this entire approach is backwards. Your brain learns fastest when you attempt first and understand later. The trying is what prepares you to learn. This is not just a theory you read about in a journal. It maps directly onto how your brain physically changes when it acquires a skill. Every time you practice something, a fatty substance called myelin slowly wraps around the nerve fibers involved in that action. Myelin acts like insulation on an electrical wire. The thicker the myelin sheath gets, the faster and more accurately the signal travels through that circuit. This is how movements become automatic, how knowledge becomes instinct, how a beginner eventually becomes an expert. But here is the key most people miss. Myelin does not build efficiently from smooth repetition alone. It builds most aggressively from the cycle of error and correction. When you fire a neural circuit, get the wrong result, detect the mismatch, and fire again with a small adjustment. That loop of fail, detect, adjust is what triggers the strongest myelination response. This is why a pianist who practices a difficult passage slowly, catches every wrong note, stops, and corrects it on the spot, improves faster than one who plays through the entire piece at full speed and glosses over the mistakes. The slow, messy, frustrating practice session is building thicker myelin around the right circuits. The smooth, confident run-through feels productive, but biologically, it is doing almost nothing. You can see the same pattern in how children learn to speak. A toddler does not wait until they have mastered grammar before opening their mouth. They dive in immediately. They say things wrong constantly. They point at a dog and call it a cat. They invent verb forms that do not exist. They mash words together in ways that make no structural sense. And every single one of those errors becomes a data point that their brain uses to update its internal model of how language works. By the age of 5, a child has made tens of thousands of linguistic mistakes, and they speak fluently, not in spite of all those errors, because of them. So if your brain is literally built to learn from mistakes, if error is the raw material your neurons need to grow, why does failure feel so terrible? The answer is not neurological, it is cultural. Somewhere along the way, long before you understood any of this, you learned that mistakes are dangerous. A wrong answer in class made other kids laugh. A failed test brought a disappointed look from your parents. A mistake at work earned you a warning you did not forget. Over time, your brain started linking errors not to learning opportunities, but to social threat. And once that link was forged, your amygdala, the part of your brain that detects danger, started hijacking the entire process. Instead of letting your prefrontal cortex calmly analyze what went wrong, your amygdala floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate climbs, your palms get slick, shame washes over you. And in that flooded state, the very learning mechanisms that depend on error processing shut down almost completely. Carol Dweck, a psychologist at Stanford University, spent years studying how people's beliefs about their own abilities shape their response to failure. She found two distinct patterns. People with what she called a fixed mindset believe that intelligence and talent are traits you are born with. They are set. When these people fail, they interpret the failure as evidence of a permanent limitation. They think they are simply not smart enough, so they avoid challenges that might expose them. They give up faster when things get hard, and over time, they learn less. People with what Dweck called a growth mindset believe that abilities can be developed through effort, strategy, and persistence. When they fail, they do not interpret it as a verdict on who they are. They interpret it as information, a signal pointing to where they need to focus next. They lean into difficulty instead of running from it. They persist longer, and they learn significantly more. The difference between these two groups is not talent. It is not raw intelligence. It is not even how much effort they put in. It is the story they tell themselves about what failure means. And Dweck's most important finding was this: that story can be rewritten at any age by anyone, starting right now. Here is the part no one tells you. You do not need to love failure. You do not need to celebrate it, or chase it, or pretend it does not sting. You just need to stay in the room with it long enough for your brain to finish its job. The ERN fires automatically, whether you want it to or not. The PP fires when you choose to pay attention. The myelin wraps when you correct your mistake and try one more time. Your brain already has every tool it needs to extract gold from your errors. The only thing that stops the process is you walking away before it finishes. Every expert you have ever admired, every master of any craft you have ever studied, arrived at mastery not by making fewer mistakes than you. They arrived by making more, far more. They just stayed with each one long enough to let it teach them something the next attempt could not. So tonight, or tomorrow, the next time you try something and get it completely wrong, do not close the book. Do not switch to something easier. Do not tell yourself that you are not cut out for this. Sit with the mistake. Look at it. Ask what went wrong and why. Let your brain feel the full weight of the gap between what you expected and what actually happened. Because that gap, that uncomfortable space between prediction and reality, is not a sign that you are failing. It is your brain learning faster than it ever could from getting it right. If you like more videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe so that when my next video comes out, you'll be notified. And with that, have a nice day.